In much of the same way, we as leaders have to filter information that comes to us, right? So my tip is never assume maliciousness where ignorance can be attributed. Never assume maliciousness. So where ignorance can be attributed, because most times people are doing the best they can with the information and the circumstances that they have. And if we assume that when somebody messes up, when somebody makes a mistake, when somebody fails, if we assume that it's malicious and we take it personal, our emotional state will be anger, frustration, all those things. And we will get defensive and respond in kind and not see the situation for what it is.
Yeah.
We have to filter that information, that instance, that scenario through the lens, through the lens of this is just ignorance. They probably didn't know the right thing, or I didn't give the right expectations. So never assume maliciousness where ignorance can be attributed. People 9 times out of 10 are not being malicious. They're not trying to make you lose your job. They're not trying to hurt you. They just don't know. What's your tip for the people, Tony? What's your tip?
This tip comes to you straight from Sicily, straight from my grandfather's mouth. He said it to me a long time ago, and it is still relevant today. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you talk. I think sometimes as leaders, we get in these positions where we feel like we need to talk. We need to have the answer to everything. We need to always be on top of everything. But as servant leaders, sometimes the number one skill you need to have is to listen. How can you understand what's going on with people if you can't listen to them? So my tip of the week is, what if we actively listen? What if we don't listen to respond, but listen to actually listen? 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen to what everyone's saying to you. Get that raw and real information, and then talk with ways to help. But the most important
part, you can be a leader, but a leader is a developed set of skills. It's a developed set. State of mind. State of mind. State of mind. State of mind. State of mind.
Welcome back to Leadership State of Mind. That brilliant man over there is my man, Tony Amato. My name is Armand Owens, and this is where we come together to talk about how all of us can become the best versions of ourselves. And this is just a conversation. It's just a conversation. Hopefully, we can add value to your life, because we're definitely adding value to each other. Ain't that right, Tony?
Yes, sir. Man, it is always great to chop it up with you, boy. Man, I am so excited about this episode and kind of the new things, the new flow we got. Looking forward to seeing people's responses. But yeah, man, things is good. Can't complain. Still in Hawaii. Sun's still out every day. Family's healthy. Like, we good. We good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Telling Japan is, I get to see seasons. It's so weird. I get to see seasons, and it's transitioned over to fall, to autumn here. And it is beautiful. It is beautiful here. And Japan is amazing. But without further ado, we're going to go into our first segment called It Was All Good Just a Week Ago, where we're talking about, hey, what are the lessons? What are the things that we have collectively learned since the last time we worked together? So, Tony, it was all good just a week ago. What have you learned?
I'll tell you what I learned on this last, I had to get underway on one of my subs, and one of the conversations that was brought up to me was, I don't think people truly understand how important it is to be genuine and authentic. So I had a chief come up and talk to me, a manager of one of the departments, and he was just like, man, I really appreciate how you seem like a genuine and authentic person, and you haven't changed due to your role. And I was like, Okay. Well, I appreciate you, right? But he
Yeah.
he dug into it a little bit, and he was just like, "Hey, man, like, I see people get in certain positions, and granted, we have the authority to make decisions and do some of the things we need to do, but how they act on a daily basis and how they interact with people kind of can adversely or positively affect the people that they serve." And I think he just was kind of blown away with how authentic I was and
Yeah.
really appreciated it. But he used it as a talking point to the bigger picture, which is, just kind of remembering like, hey man, like don't forget where you came from. Like find who your voice is. You don't get to a certain role and then think you have to change and be someone that you're not. And so we talk about this a lot on the show, but it kind of like
Yeah.
reared his head back up is something that, I definitely need to stay true to that. So continue to be me for all those that enjoy it, and for those that don't, still gonna be me. So
Absolutely, man. I would tell you the thing that I learned the most since we last been together, or just continually to relearn. I think over as we talk about things that we're learning, a lot of it is like relearning because we may not have been as intentional about making sure we stick to it.
sure,
But one of the things I realized early is the way that we all communicate is just frequencies and just sound waves propagating coming out of our mouths. And we have to be mindful of everybody hears at different frequencies. Everybody hears things very, very differently. And I had one of the chiefs, talking about chiefs coming to me. It's like, hey man, you're intense. And I appreciate it. But sometimes I think you may need to alter, how you come across. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Because I can be high energy at times.
yeah,
Actually, probably all the
all
time.
the time.
But yeah. So that moderating kind of that energy and making sure that my delivery is commensurate with everybody that's in the room. Right. So for those that may be introverts, extroverts, whatever the case may be, I need to be considerate of the audience and how I delivered, that message, because it's not about necessarily the content, it's about how they receive it. I
Yeah,
have a responsibility not only for the transmit side, but also as a leader, I'm responsible for the receive side as well. Right. So I can't just say, oh, well, I said it and that's how you're going to have to take it. No, 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 no. I have to be mindful of the audience because it's my responsibility to make sure they receive what I'm trying to transmit. So just making sure I take those frequencies and moderate it. And that just means changing up a couple of words, saying the same thing in different methodologies a couple of times so everybody catches what you're talking about. So yeah, that's for me. I just got to be mindful of that.
I love that. And for those that missed the extra tidbit in there, this is free. That means when you get information that you might not like, you need to remove ego from it and be willing to accept it, because that's how we grow and get better. So, in case you missed that extra little added bonus, yeah, man, getting the feedback is important, but how you respond to it is more important. So, and like we always talk about, look inward first, see what we can do to make the situation better. So it's dope that you had, someone say that to you, because I feel like that will lead to
Yeah,
more success as a team as you move down the road.
absolutely, absolutely. And kind of a perfect segue. One of the things that, Tony and I value very, very deeply is making sure that we're not relying solely on our knowledge, on our wisdom, but taking advantage of the wisdom of others, moving into our next segment, talking about the blueprint, because there are people that have condensed 20 plus years worth of knowledge into books that we can glean from. Right.
Yep.
So in this segment, we're going to be talking about what books we are currently reading, or what book we're currently reading, and what we're gleaning from it. So Tony, what you reading, bro?
All right, man. So I just finished two books. It was normally I'm reading one book at a time, but I was kind of jumping back and forth this last couple weeks. So the first book I finished was Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Uh,
Yes.
you read that book?
No, I just love the title.
Okay, yeah. So it's by Susan Jeffers, and essentially it talks about how we must overcome the voice in our head that makes us second guess the decisions we make. So a lot of the book, I mean, there's some great conversations, great dialogues in there, really focusing on, she calls it the chatterbox. And essentially it's that
Mm.
voice in your head that'll like walk you right out of a situation, right? And just have
Yeah.
you afraid to take the next step, afraid to do the next thing. So that was the book I finished up. And the other one is Insight by Tasha Eurich.
Hmm.
And that was a continuation into what we were talking about. She thinks that self-awareness is like the number one superpower. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a great book, right? We've talked about emotional intelligence. I can't get enough of like figuring out how to make myself better and how to like look at things from different angles and have that
Yeah.
emotional intelligence. And so this was a deep dive into self-awareness and seeing ourselves clearly so we can lead. And yeah, man, I mean, I think both of the books were really good. Like, I would tell you, if you don't read a lot and you don't, you don't listen to books, you don't use Audible, whatever your means of bringing in new information, if you start doing it constantly, you're going to get to a point where some books might not give you, like, you're not going to get 100 aha moments in every
Yeah.
book you
Yeah.
read,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think when I first started reading, it'd be like, oh my God, like I'd be taking so much notes on stuff and be like, I need to do that. I need to do that. But, now sometimes it's, maybe 10 or 15 things that are like, wow, I could really use that. And I think with Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, it was definitely some good talking points and stuff I got out of it. Definitely some quotes and things that I'll be using, man. But both were good books, and moving on to the next one. So what about you, man? What you been reading?
No doubt. So the book I was reading this past few weeks is called The Traveler's Summit. So The Traveler's Summit is actually a sequel to the book called The Traveler's Gift by an author by the name of Andy Andrews, who happens to be probably top 3 authors for me.
Wow.
Traveler's Gift was about a man by the name of David Ponder, who life is hitting him hard. He's lost his job. His child is super sick. He is at his wit's end. He doesn't have any money. Like his life is taking a toll on him. So much so that he gets into a place where he contemplates, taking his own life. And
Wow.
he ends up in that contemplation, he ends up wrecking his car and going, kind of going unconscious. But when he goes unconscious, he goes through what is called a traveling, where he meets. It's almost kind of like the Charles Dickens, the Ghost of Christmas
Story?
Past, the Ghost of
Yeah.
Christmas. But if you take kind of that same concept, and he's meeting all of these historical figures in these very, very pivotal moments. So the first one he meets is Harry S. Truman. He goes and he's in the office with Harry S. Truman while he's contemplating what is going to happen for World War II. What's his next decision going to be? And it's phenomenal. So he goes, and Andy Andrews is somebody that has, he was in a rough place in his life before he started to write. And one of the things that he highlights that he always did was read biographies voraciously. And
Wow.
reading of those biographies, he was able to extract these life principles from these very prominent people that he's applied to his own books and to his wisdom, so to speak. So he takes these experiences, makes it look like it's a narrative, it's a story, but it's all about how to live and how to use these principles that these very prominent historical figures have utilized in their own lives. So Harry S. Truman, Abraham Lincoln, Joshua Chamberlain, all these prominent figures. So the next book is he gets to another point in his life. He succeeds. He gets out of the situation that he's in this last book. He wins, becomes one of the richest men, in the world, the whole nine. And we catch David he loses his wife. And now this sense of action that he once had is now kind of gone. He's been up in his penthouse. He's become a recluse, not coming outside. And one of the people that he meets is the Archangel Gabriel. And Archangel Gabriel comes back to him, says, hey, look, you got to go on another travel because the world is in turmoil and we need to figure out how to get the world out of turmoil. So what it is a summit of all these travelers. So he's at a table with Winston Churchill, Anne Frank, Albert Einstein, all these prominent figures,
Wow.
Carter G. Woodson. Yeah, it's phenomenal. And it's really how it's an interesting insight into how these historical figures see the world, how they deployed their wisdom. Had Solomon from the Bible in it, David from the Bible in it. It just it gives you this wonderful insight of how they would handle these situations, and essentially taking all these principles that they live by and applying them to your own life. It's a phenomenal. One of my favorite quotes that comes out of that is, I believe wisdom is the ability to see into the future the consequences of one's choices in the present. The beginning of wisdom, however, is simply to desire it. And just gleaning from these conversations, right?
Yeah.
And obviously they're made up, but it's so real, it's so pertinent, because he dove into these biographies, and it makes you feel like you're actually having a conversation with Winston Churchill. Like you're getting knowledge directly from Abraham Lincoln. It's phenomenal. The set. So Traveler's Gift and Traveler's Summit, those, so reading Traveler's Summit, the sequel. So this has been phenomenal.
Wow, man. I'm gonna have to add that to the list. I like that a lot.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I like it because it's not in the same vein of the normal kind of personal development books that we read. It's an actual story, right? So you can follow it, and there's a normal kind of climax and inclination. All those things are normal as part of the story, but it's so value adding in a way for personal development.
Love it. Wow, that's cool, man. I like that a lot.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, and naturally, as we're talking about the blueprint and extracting all these wonderful lessons that we get from these books, we're going right into bars. The next segment is bars. So bars is just these quotes that have stood out to us over the past few weeks. So what's the top bar for you there, Tone?
All right, man. So I got two this week.
You got two.
First one,
overachiever.
Overachiever. It's because I was doing two books, man. Like I wanted to pull something from either one. So the first one was, an emotion, which is a passion, ceases to be a passion as soon as we form a distinct and clear idea thereof. And so that's Benedict Espinosa from Insight. And essentially what he's talking about, like, is instead of asking why, start asking what. Instead of why do I feel this way, what am I feeling? Because what can help us name our emotions and help us align ourselves with, just like allow us to stay in control. So the whole conversation was like, to understand your emotions, you have to be able to get to a state where you know what it is that you're feeling. And so that really stuck with me, man. I was like, man, it was something that kind of, I don't know, I had to listen to it a couple times because I was like, man, what's he trying to get at? Because all the time,
spit that bar one more time for us.
An emotion, which is a passion, ceases to be a passion as soon as we form a distinct and clear idea thereof.
Yeah.
So definitely something that if you read a lot of books, there's a lot of things and a lot of conversation where it's like, ask yourself why 5 times, ask your team why 5 times, right? And so this was like, hey man, like you have this emotion or this passion, but instead of asking why, what is it that you're feeling that's leading to this emotion? And so it's pretty good. Definitely had me thinking a little bit. And then the second one was from Susan Jeffers, and it was, shout out to anyone who has felt vulnerable, terrified, and overwhelmed. I completely get it. She says, but don't shrink from challenging situations. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Feel the fear and do it anyway. So I just think it's a, it kind of talks about what we are about on this show, right? It's not this place where we live in this glass house and everything's perfect, right? Like, you got to be willing to be, vulnerable and make some mistakes and feel overwhelmed and find a way to come through it on the other side. And hopefully, if you're listening on the podcast, man, we're doing some of those things, giving you some of those tools to help you get out on the other side. So those were the bars that were fresh in the head this week. What you got over there, man?
I'm telling you, man. So for me, I just got one. One.
You said I'm an overachiever, but in the last segment, you dropped an additional bar. So, like, stop acting like we ain't dropping, like you ain't dropping bars. Come on now.
The one that I picked for the session for bars though, because
Yeah,
you right. But the one I picked for this one is
yeah.
from one of my favorite just humans in history, Ralph Waldo Emerson. If there's somebody that I wish I could have a conversation with, it would be Ralph Waldo Emerson. But and it goes back to what you learned this week with the authenticity, right? And the importance of it. To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment.
Ooh, I love it. I'd put that
Yeah.
on a shirt.
Yeah. I mean, you got the ability to, so
Yeah, probably right. Yeah,
yeah.
nah, that's good. I love that, man. Yeah, man, I
Yeah,
love
man.
this.
So that sticks with me.
Yeah, and I love this segment, man. I think it's so important, to kind of just talk about those bars that kind of hit a certain way and get us to think and engage, because it's definitely those things that like stick to you when you're reading those books. Like it's those like, whoa, like let me run that back, let me hear that again. And it ain't no different than listen to a track where you're like, hey man, I don't think you caught that because I didn't see,
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't see that what I needed to see from you to know that you were paying attention. I'm gonna run that back
Yeah.
real quick.
You respond right.
Yeah, and it's significantly easier now. I don't gotta stop, rewind. You know what I'm saying? It ain't the CD. Like this is easy, but I need you to pay
Yeah.
attention because I'm about to drop some knowledge on you. So
That's a
yeah,
fact.
man, love
That's
it,
a fact.
love it.
Yep.
All right,
And
man. So what's next?
our final segment before we go into the main topic for today
Yeah,
is we got 99 problems, but leadership ain't one.
that ain't
So we're
one.
going to talk about, give you one tip from us that we've gleaned over time to help you to get from A to B as quick as possible. So 99 problems, but leadership ain't one. What's your tip for the people, Tony? What's your tip?
This tip comes to you straight from Sicily, straight from my grandfather's mouth. He said it to me a long time ago, and it is still relevant today. You have
Yeah.
2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you talk. I think sometimes as leaders, we get in these positions where we feel like we need to talk, 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 talk. We need to have the answer to everything. We need to always be on top of everything. But as servant leaders, sometimes the number one skill you need to have is to listen. How
Yeah.
can you understand what's going on with people if you can't listen to them? So my tip of
Yes.
the week is, what if we actively listen? What if we don't
Yeah.
listen to respond, but listen to actually listen? 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen to what everyone's saying to you. Get that raw and real information, and then talk with ways to help. But the most important part, listen. That's what I got
Yeah.
from you. Shout out, Grandpa. I appreciate you.
That's what's up. That's what's up. I love it. I love it. I love it. My tip is actually pretty simple.
Okay.
Because you know what? You are one of the best A-gangers of all time. I think you can claim that. I think you can claim that, right?
I don't
And
know.
one of the
Maybe.
things I think about, with my tip is when you receive oil for your systems, one of the first things that you have to do is filter it so that it's clean to be used in the system, right? Because it comes with its own mess, right?
Yep.
In much of the same way, we as leaders have to filter information that comes to us, right? So my tip is never assume maliciousness where ignorance can be attributed. Never assume maliciousness. So where ignorance can be attributed, because most times people are doing the best they can with the information and the circumstances that they have. And if we assume that when somebody messes up, when somebody makes a mistake, when somebody fails, if we assume that it's malicious and we take it personal, our emotional state will be anger, frustration, all those things. And we will get defensive and respond in kind and not see the situation for what it is.
Yeah.
We have to filter that information, that instance, that scenario through the lens, through the lens of, this is just ignorance. They probably didn't know the right thing, or I didn't give the right expectations. So never assume maliciousness where ignorance can be attributed. People 9 times out of 10 are not being malicious. They're not trying to make you lose your job. They're not trying to hurt you. They just don't know. So that
No one
makes it a learning issue.
No one woke up today and said, "How can I make you mad?" Maybe they just
Yes.
don't know.
They
Is it
just
possible?
don't
Is it
know.
possible? Yeah, no, that's great, man. Hey, that's a great tip. I'm gonna make sure I use that this week. The first time I get upset, I appreciate you. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
No doubt, no doubt. Tone, it's time to get into the main point. What we talking about? What we talking about this week, bro? What we talking about this week?
This week we are talking about how do we bounce back from failure? How do we bounce back from shortcomings when things don't go the way they want it to? If all we did on this show is talk about everything is the grass is green, everything's perfect, butterflies and birds, like it's easy, right? But what I think people lose sight of is that no one's going to have a perfect day, a perfect month, a perfect week, a perfect year. Like you're going to have shortcomings, you're going to make mistakes. But the key now is that bounce back. Like, how do you
Yeah.
bounce back? And I know it's going to happen. We're going to end up talking about some emotional intelligence and how do we self-regulate. But the key is understanding when something goes wrong. How do we recover from that? And how do we bounce back to make sure we stay with the right foot forward, with the best attitude that we can have to continue to
Yeah.
support our teams? And I got to be honest, when we were talking about the topic, the first thing that came to mind was the CEO, and I forgot her name, so I apologize, of the
Mm,
company Spanx. You know, like
yeah.
the women Spanx. So she
Yeah.
did this TED talk, and she said she attributed a lot of her success to her father and their dinner conversations. So when the family sat around the table every day, he would say, "Hey, what did you guys fail at today?" And she was so mad at the time and like couldn't and honestly even now, like, God, what a like a thought, like as a 40-year-old who's been doing this leadership stuff for a while, like what a thought to be like, hey, what did we fail at today? But what I
Yeah.
loved about the message was, and what I hope that we kind of talk about through this podcast is like, you're gonna have failures, right? And
Yeah.
failures show flex. They show that you're trying to do more things, right? That you're not staying in the comfort zone, that you're willing to, push the company to the next stage, push your team around you. And through that flex and that push, you might stumble, you might fail, you might fall back a little bit. But how do we overcome that? And so that's kind of the direction that I was thinking about going, and that story really stuck to me when we were talking about kicking off this episode, man.
Bro, I love that.
Okay.
I love that conversation. I don't think I saw that TED talk. Now I'm kind of like in the back of my mind, making sure I make that mental note to make sure I go and watch that.
Yeah, I
Because
apologize. I forgot her name, but I'm sure you find her.
yeah, we're gonna put it back. We're gonna put it back up, put it up on the screen, and make sure that link is there for everybody, so they can go and reference that as well.
Perfect.
Now, I will tell you, when you told me that, when you were talking about it, the first thing I thought about was the Disney movie Meet the Robinsons. I've talked about that before on
You
the
have, yeah,
podcast.
yeah,
Yeah, where where if you've seen Meet the Robinsons, you know what I'm talking about. If not, go watch it. Dope, underrated Disney movie, but the celebration of failure at the table. He was trying
yeah.
to make this peanut butter and jelly gun that made the perfect combination of it, and it blew up. And when he failed, the entire family celebrated.
Yep.
It absolutely celebrated, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it because it normalizes failure.
Yeah.
It normalizes failure, and I think that one of the steps to be able to be the leader that we want to become is that we have to have the right relationship with failure, right?
Sure.
Expecting it, knowing that it's coming, right? And being in a position where we can look at it as, oh, I messed this up. Oh, the comeback is going to be strong,
Yeah.
because we as leaders, we get the opportunity to define it and apply whatever meaning we want to it. Right. So it's like, oh, this is an opportunity. This is not a thing that is going to cause my demise. This is
Yeah.
the thing that's going to cause me to propel further than what I was last week, last month, last year. It's how we get to frame it. And I love the opportunity to take those things that I previously may have thought were true
Yep.
get enlightened with some new perspective. And now I have a whole new place to explore. Now, in the moment, it may not feel so good. And I acknowledge that. I'm not trying to say that it's just I'm some unique person that every time I fail, I'm just like, yeah, let's go. Yeah. No. There's a time frame. There's a time period of
Reflection.
Yep. Messed that one up. Messed that. Yep. Yep. But there's one thing I always remember is that failure is an event, not a person.
Yeah.
Failure is an event, not a person. That's why having that, rectifying that relationship with failure, expecting it, knowing that it's coming, and forgiving yourself for not being perfect.
Yep.
Like, that is a hard thing for people to do because there's an expectation for perfection, right?
Sure.
That comes from that we project on ourselves, that people project on us, the positions that we're in. So that failure, we don't take those things very well, but it's just an event. It's not who you are. And I believe that one of the best determining factors of how you bounce back is the time frame that it takes from experience to learning. When you experience that failure, you experience that moment, you experience that mistake, how long do you take to wallow in it? How long do you allow that thing to negatively detract your emotional state? How long do you let it bring you down? Because I contend that if that time frame is a long period, that's going to affect all the future things that you're working towards. Because the people that you have the privilege of leading, they're going to see that emotional state. They're going to see how you're handling that failure. You're going to see how you are framing that for yourself. And that's going to inform how they should do it as well. So it's not just about you. It's about the people that you lead too. So looking at those failures, recognizing, hey, I experienced it. It happened. I got to get to a place where I recognize that failure is an event, not me, not a person. Forgive myself. And now I can move into the learning phase. What do you think about that, Tone?
I think a lot about that. One, you quoting yourself, right? Isn't it that failure thing? That's from the book, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're using quotes when necessary. I read the book. I love that. I love when you said that in the book. I love when you say it now. I think that it makes a lot of sense. I think that there's a lot of takeaways from the failure aspect. One that we mentioned is the reframing piece, right?
Yeah.
We have to quickly, as leaders, reframe it as, how is this a teachable moment? How are we going to get better? So I take it in like the sports context, right? Like that happens to me. Like, dude just crossed me over and got a quick layup. Like, that was a mistake. I was leaning too much to the left. I didn't realize he was left-handed, whatever it was, right? He got one on me. And I immediately go like, that will be the last time that is the mistake that gets me. He might get me with a turnaround. He might put a jumper up in the lane, but like, that mistake is not going to be the one. I'm going to make sure I'm guarding him. I'm going to force him to go right. And so I think the first thing is always to like be able to reframe the situation and then challenge yourself. Okay, I fell, I made this mistake, but like, how is this teachable? How are we going to get better? And how are we going to make sure that doesn't get us again? Because something else is going to get us, right? We're gonna falter somewhere else. We're going to forget something. We're not perfect. But how is that one not going to happen again? And I think the next thing, you hit on it, is like, people are watching you, man. Like, if every time things don't go perfect, like you're down in the dumps and, you got a bad attitude and your team is looking at you for like what to do next and you're a wreck, right? You can't be like, you can't go through these swing of emotions where you hit all 4 seasons just because something went wrong, right? You can't go from hot to cold to I don't care or whatever, right? You got to be able to accept the information, dissect it. And then, like you said, that gap in the middle, right? Like, how do you, what are we going to do next? And I think that we're going to talk about like how we get back up from failure. But I think the most important part is, before the failure happens, is what can the leaders do to prepare you, right? And I think for us, it's on us to be like, hey, we're not okay with where we are. right? That
Yeah.
whole conversation, like we have to remove good to become great. And in that process, there are going to be failures that happen, but that's okay because we're going to
Yeah.
learn from them and those are going to make us better. And so I think if that's like your entering argument beforehand, then maybe the team is faster to, that time frame that you're talking about shrinks because your team is ready for it with the right attitude and the right culture and the right mindset. But not every team is like that, and not everyone is able to quickly respond to that. So those were my kind of initial thoughts based on what you were saying, man. I hope that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, definitely. And you said something in there, that kind of triggered a thought. You said when you talked about going from good to great. And the way that I think about good is I think that with some level of effort, we can get to good. And that's a comfortable place to be. That's a
Yep.
place that you can brag about. Yeah, I'm good at this, right?
Yeah.
But I think that it's a dangerous place to be because it's not the full expression of who you could possibly be. Because what we're talking about here is about being the best version of yourself, and good is just a step to getting there.
It's not the good version of yourself. It's the best version.
Facts.
Yep.
So that good is getting there, I think is great. Staying there, I think, is dangerous. It's a dangerous place to be because it never fully challenges you. You never fully reveal or express who you could possibly be. And in that, making sure that we stay in the mindset that it's not about us. I can become a lid, going back to 21 Laws of Leadership with John Maxwell. I can become a lid on somebody's leadership potential because I'm so focused and I'm so happy. I'm so content with just being good because I'm going to have to fail significantly along the way to be great.
Yeah. I mean, and if you want to look up like when you think good is good enough, I'll just let you like look up the article on the CEO of BlackBerry prior to the demise of BlackBerry. If you haven't read that guy was in the comfort zone, right? I got everything figured out. I have all the contracts. Everything is good. We don't need to adjust. We don't need to get better. Like, we gonna stay right here. Hey, like Will Smith said, we stay right here. We don't need to make no pizza. There's food there, right? You just stay right here. And that led to kids don't even know what BlackBerry is anymore, right?
Nope.
So I think that, while we're talking about failure, it's important to understand that one of the reasons why we're talking about it is because to push yourself to be better, there's going to be failures because you're trying something you haven't done before. You're doing something that you haven't done. And I think one of the things I really wanted to throw over to you, man, is I would argue that the younger generation right now is having more trouble with failure than a couple generations removed based on some of the way the culture is right now. And so what I see a lot of is people that stayed in their comfort zone, didn't really get pushed. It was okay to do what they needed to do. And now when failure hits, it is like end of the world type stuff because they haven't been let down previously, right? Quick examples, right? Sometimes like now there's like no cuts on certain sports teams, right? And so like everyone makes the team, right? Everyone gets a trophy, even if you lose. So, and I'm not knocking anyone or saying anyone's soft, but I'm saying to you, if you go through your life and there's never any crushing moments that like make you feel like the world is over, then when the first one comes, it's going to hurt even more, right? Like it's going to be, because now you've went so many years in your life where you haven't seen it, that now it's like a gut check that you feel like you can't even stand up from. And I mean, you got younger kids, I mean, a little older than me, I mean, and I don't know if you agree or disagree with that, but that's kind of the conversation that I have with my junior people is this dialogue about like, how are you going to bounce back when things don't go right? I don't know. Throw it over to you.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is a hard one, right? Because and I think about it, because I 1000% agree with you, and I think about it as a parent, right? We never want to see our kids in peril.
Yeah.
We never want to see them hurt. We never want to see them in any kind of pain. But the thing is that for us to have gotten to the position in life where we have gotten, there was pain on the way. Because no significant area of growth in our lives didn't have pain associated with it.
Yeah.
Pain is a necessity. That failure along the way is an absolute necessity. So remembering that while we're getting caught up in the emotion of seeing our kids struggle, and I'm dealing with Justice, she's running cross country right now. And I remember the first race that she got over here to Japan, jumped right in, and she was going, and she talked about going up this hill, and she just wanted to walk, but she just, in her mind, she was like, I can't do it. I have to keep going. I have to keep going. And that brought so much joy to me, because she was experiencing the pain in that moment. She had a choice. She could have very easily walked. Nobody would have judged her for it. But she's building that within, where it's like, no. I got to keep going. And she came in, really good time. But the first thing that she said, after she caught her breath, she was like, I got top 10 next time. I'm getting top 10 next time. They ain't even ready for me. And I'm just like, okay. Right. And I'm hoping that my parenting, because I encourage failure.
Sure.
I encourage failure. Absolutely encourage failure. No. Let's go mess some new things up.
Yeah.
Let's go mess some new things up.
You got to.
Because that's part of it. And but I think, one of the things I illustrate even to my team is what I did with my daughter, and both of my daughters, in helping them ride their bikes.
Sure.
Like, build an environment where they can fail, but it's not detrimental.
Yeah.
So when I showed them how to ride their bikes, I showed them on the grass.
Yeah.
You get the benefit of falling, right? But it's not like we did it. My dad pushed me down the street and 100%. My knees skinned up, bleeding everywhere. And there was some hesitation. There was some apprehension, if you will, for me getting back on that, on that bike.
Sure. Yeah.
I got the benefit of falling, but gee, right?
Yeah.
But
yes,
my daughters. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, first of all, she gets a shout out from me, because I know I definitely listened to the voice in my head that said I was tired this weekend. I had a 9-mile run, and I needed to take a break around 7, and I couldn't overcome it. So shout out to Justice, you know what I'm saying, for being mentally tough. I like that. I was mentally weak this Saturday. So I think that it's great to have this conversation as parents and to be able to, prep the team. But often we receive a team or we come into a new job and the team already exists. And so while it takes some time to build up that resiliency and kind of teach that, hey, failure is okay and how do we overcome it is okay, sometimes failure is going to happen and the team might not be ready. And so, I wanted to dive a little bit into, some of the tricks of the trade or things that you think are important for that bounce back. And the first one I wanted to start with is, I think all of us need to remain humble and show humility in the face of failure, right?
You got to.
If you fail or your team fails and you can't acknowledge the failure, or if you want to blame outside sources or the weather or cleats or I'm just kidding. No, whatever you want to blame, right? Whatever the thing is, right? Like, we can't be victims about this. We talked about it on the show before, right? We can't have a victim mentality. And I think the first step that I would offer to my team is to show humility and be humble enough to accept the mistake and then come up with a plan to get better. So, I mean, that's one of the first things. If we're going to kind of categorize top 5, man, like, that's one of them is the first one, right? Remove ego, however you want to word it, man. Like, you got to be able to accept it. So
yeah, definitely, man. Because if you don't have that humility, in the face of that failure, in the face of that moment, you're going to compromise your integrity.
Yeah.
You're going to compromise your integrity. You're not going to own it. You're not going to take the blame for it. And your team is going to see that.
Yeah.
And your credibility and that trust is going to go away, and their willingness to follow you is going to dissipate very, very quickly. So that humility piece, that's right up there. Right. I think we brought up, I think when you talk about if you had to have a top 5 or, kind of step by step. I think we brought it up, reframing, the
Sure.
situation, right?
Of course.
Just taking that information and applying whatever meaning to it that we want, right? This is an opportunity. There's nothing that's good or bad. We
Sure.
we have the ability to define it however we want to, right? So I can classify everything as good.
Yeah.
I can see the good in every situation, and being able to do that, that's a skill. It takes time, a clear mind, apart from your emotions, to really look at it discreetly and say, okay, what am I going to extract from this that we're going to grow from? What am I going to extract from this that I'm going to lean on heavily so that we can leverage the power of that failure and turn those L's into W's?
Yeah. I love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think in every situation, failure is going to come to your organization in one form of another, right? But your ability to, accept those failures, be humble about it, remove your ego, and then be able to reframe the situation is key. And not only do you reframe the situation, like sometimes you just gotta take a step back and like, what's the big picture? Like, did anyone get hurt?
Yep.
Did anyone
Yeah.
die? Are we going home? Like
Perspective.
okay, that perspective is big, right? So reframing is one thing, but perspective is another, right? At the end of the day, like, all right, did we lose millions of dollars? No. Okay. All right. Did anyone die or get hurt or injured? No. Okay. All right. So we can recover from this, right? Like this is a recoverable moment. But you have to be able to give them that perspective. And I also think the attitude of the leadership is key in those moments of failure, right? The story of, man, I'm gonna get better with these quotes and these famous people that I read about all the time because I'm bad with names. But the story of the guy that took over Ford, right? So when he took over Ford, his big thing was these red, yellow, and green stoplights, right? So Ford was having all this trouble, going through all this struggle, but no one would admit failure, right?
Yeah.
Like everything's green, everything's good, and he's like, you realize like I can see the reports, right? Like everything's not good, but no manager was afraid to admit failure, and the first one that did, he was like everyone's like, oh boy, this dude's about to get fired. This is the end of it.
Yeah.
And instead he praised it and like acknowledged the fact that he was able to be honest and transparent and tell him what's going on. So I think it's also important for the teams to be able to, to do that, right? To acknowledge the mistake. And as a leader, not bite someone's head off for failing, right? For admitting to you that they made a mistake. If we both say on this show, hey, like no one wakes up and says, I want to suck today. If that's an agreement that we all have, then that person didn't go to work and say, man, I really want to fail at this. So you can't take it personal. They didn't personally affect you. Like they didn't try to attack you by their inability to do something or a mistake that was made. So you as a leader have to have the right attitude when these mistakes come up and have the right attitude if you're the one that makes a mistake, right? So there's an ownership piece, there's an attitude piece, like depending on where it comes from. But at the end of the day, like if you flip out when someone makes a mistake, they're not going to come to you to even address it the next time. And what would you rather have as a leader? Would you rather have people that are transparent and trust you so they can come and talk to you? Or would you rather have someone that's going to sit back and be like, I'd rather not say anything because last time the other guy got yelled at? So I think those are some really important keys to overcoming those failures and getting on the other side.
Absolutely. And when you think about the attitude that you apply when these things happen, your emotional state, your most dominant emotional state when these things happen, that's going to define your culture. That's going to define the leader's response when things happen, when things that we may classify as failures, things we may classify as bad, when they happen. That leader's response is what's going to drive the culture of the organization, the team, the family, whatever the case may be. I think about the Challenger disaster with NASA. There's a term that came out of that called the normalization of deviance. And it talks about the culture that existed in leadership with minor things, minor failures, minor errors, minor deficiencies that no one gave any credence to.
Sure.
If I brought something that was wrong because I got this timeline, I got this deadline that I got to meet. Well, if I tell them that we can't meet it, the supervisor's going to blow up on me. So
Yep.
we'll just overlook it. It's fine. Right.
It'll be all right.
It'll be fine. Right. And
Yeah.
these small deviances along the way, because people are so afraid to bring those things, to the leadership, could very easily result in, what we saw, the Challenger disaster, with the astronauts' lives being lost. Right. So the normalization of deviance, because whatever we allow, that becomes the new standard.
Yep.
And by you being the leader, if people don't bring it to you, guess what? You are allowing it because you're creating a culture where people won't bring it to you.
Yep.
So keeping those things in mind, here are the possibilities if we don't manage, or if we don't cultivate that relationship with failure, and that we are not the leaders, the ones out front taking that failure in the right way, in the right emotional state, with the right attitude.
Okay. Well, I mean, what else you got? I think the last thing I had for kind of over, as far as like how to bounce back from that, is, we kind of already talked about, I guess, accepting our flaws, right? Just kind of acknowledging, okay, like we talked this good game about like having the right attitude and coming up with, a plan to fix it and never make the same mistake twice. But like, we also need to address how the thing happened, right?
Yeah.
And so however you want to do that, like, you can have the right attitude, you can have, the right mindset and reframe, do all that stuff. But like, at some point you got to dig into how it happened.
Yeah.
And then what you're going to do as a team to not let it happen again. And so whatever your process is, your command, or at your organization that you work at, or at home when you made your wife mad, like, you need to figure out why it happened. Like, you need to dig into, like, I don't want to do that again. Okay. So take the time to really dig into why it happened and what you could have did to avoid it. And then what's that feedback loop to teach everyone that, to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And when you're able to accept a mistake, figure out what was wrong, have the right attitude moving forward, train the team on how to not allow it to happen again, and then move forward, there's a lot of growth there. And that's got to be the conversation, is like, through these mistakes, like, we're going to get stronger as a team. We're going to understand each other better. And maybe we find some other flaws and other mistakes that we were making in the process. And when we're able to, like, now look at that, it's like, okay, so we made this mistake, but look what else we did. We fixed 2 other things in the process that might have bit us in the tail end on another thing. We're now in a better spot to handle these 3 other things, because we didn't take it personal. We didn't get upset. Instead, we looked at it as leaders without, emotion and attitude, and we addressed the problem and then fixed the problem and found ways to move ahead. And I think if you're able to do those things, you're going to be able to bounce back from those failures and, like, become a better version of yourself. Your team's going to be better, and you're going to be in a better position to overcome adversity the next time it comes your way.
Definitely. Yeah. So the way I look at it, kind of, framing it step by step, you have this thing that happens.
Yeah.
Right. First step, making sure you remain humble as you're going through that circumstance, as you're dealing with those things, so that you remain teachable, that you own it, and that you respond, with integrity. I think next, making sure that you forgive yourself for not being perfect.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Reframe and start, so you can start to reframe that situation, right? Because you want to get out of the midst of the experience. You want to get past the experience, right? So that you can start to reframe it, right? I think that you can't adequately reframe it until you have dealt with it within yourself. That failure, this is an event that happened. This is not who I am. This is just an event, and this is my response to it. Next, so I can reframe it. And now I'm in the learning phase. Right now, I'm in the learning phase. I'm in an extraction phase. what can I gather from this? What can I gather from this? What can I pull out of this situation? All right. And move right into application. Don't waste any time. Don't sit on it. Don't let it sit in a routing bin somewhere on somebody's desk. Right.
In front of the people.
Let's get right into application and start to learn these new lessons and start to apply this new approach so that we can get into the next inevitable failure that's going to come. This cycle is never going to stop, right? But we want to refine that process so that we can move quickly and swiftly through those things so that our team can learn those lessons and apply it so that we can go from good to great.
Love it. Love it, man. That was pretty great. I don't know what else I would say. I don't know what else I would say to wrap that up, man. All I would tell the people out there is, hey, man, we're really trying to make this leadership thing something that everyone can get a hold of, right? Continue to like, share, follow. Check us out on YouTube, Spotify. This topic is something that's going to come up in your everyday life, okay? Failure is going to happen. Shortfalls are going to happen. Things aren't going to go the way you want. How you respond, you control the response. So don't allow outside things to affect your response. When you do that, all you do is give power to that thing or that person. And at Leadership State of Mind, we don't do that, right? We accept what the failure is, accept what happened. We have the right attitude, the right mindset, and then we overcome it. And that's what we do here. So bottom line, we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to fumble. We're all going to come up a little bit short, but that's what makes us human. But how we recover and how we respond is what makes us great. So please like, share, follow, continue to support Leadership State of Mind. We every day striving to make us better versions of ourselves. Thank you for listening, man. Continue to come back.
Appreciate everybody. Talk to you soon.
Peace.